Today we're going to talk about how to find the no parallax point of your lens. And I'm going to show you two ways you can easily find it. You'll be making perfect panos in no time. Panoramic photography is a useful technique when you're out shooting landscapes. Sometimes the scene just doesn't fit inside your viewfinder and you want to include more. Or perhaps you want to enlarge an image to the size of your wall and your camera just doesn't have the pixels to do that. For many scenes, the need to find the no parallax point is overkill. Handheld single row panos of distant subjects are often stitched together with no problem at all with today's software. However, if you're shooting a scene that has close-in objects or perhaps shooting a multi-row panorama, then finding your lens's no parallax point is essential. So what is parallax? Webster defines parallax as the apparent displacement or the difference in apparent direction of an object as seen from two different points not on a straight line with the object. So what this means to us as photographers is that background objects will move relative to the foreground objects as we're panning between each shot. This can result in a huge headache as we're trying to stitch these images together to create our panoramic photo. So to correct for this parallax, we're going to have to find this no parallax point for our lens. If you're shooting with a fixed focal length, you only have to do this once. If you're shooting with a zoom lens, however, you're going to need to determine the no parallax points for the common focal lengths that you like to shoot panos with. So the technical definition of the entrance pupil is the image of the aperture blades when you're looking through the front of the lens. Let me show you an example. So you can see, hopefully you can see through my lens there, and I'm going to go ahead and open and close, stop down the aperture so you can see it. Now, when I'm looking into the front of this lens, I'm not really seeing the actual physical location of those aperture blades. Since I'm looking through a series of lens elements, it's actually projecting that image in a different location. And that image that I'm seeing, that location of that image is what I need to find for the entrance pupil or the no parallax point. So how do we find the entrance pupil or the no parallax point of the lens? Well, I'm going to show you two methods to find it. Let's go. Okay, so before we get started, let's talk about the setup I've got going on here. I've got two light stands up front. One represents my background object, the other one's my foreground object. I've got my camera connected to a nodal rail, and then it's attached to my Pano Gimbal Head, which is attached to my tripod. My tripod is leveled, and my camera lens is aligned with my light stands up front. So that's your basic setup. As you can see, my nodal rail is all the way forward, and it's in the worst spot for a panorama. But I wanted to demonstrate the parallax before we get started with the two methods. So let's have a look. Hopefully, this is still lined up. Awesome, it is. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm basically at, let's see, it's 70 millimeters is my focal length. So remember, if you have a zoom lens, you're going to need to find the no parallax point for all the different focal lengths that you use to shoot panos with that particular lens. Of course, if it's a fixed lens, you just do it once and you're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom all the way in. just so that we can have a good look and see what that looks like. So we are exactly centered on the light stands. All right, I'm going to zoom back out and I'm going to move my focus point all the way over to the right. Doesn't matter which way you go for this demonstration. I'm just going to the right. And then I'm going to pan the camera to the left, and you can actually see the background object shift as I pan the camera. And then I'm going to zoom in, and you can see that displacement. So that's what we want to correct by finding the no parallax point. Okay, so method number one I use when I'm running and gunning and I don't have the no parallax point already measured for a particular focal length. The way you do it is you look into the lens, so the business side of the lens, and you want to mark with your finger approximately where it appears that the aperture blades are located. So kind of hard to see, but I'm about like right there. So I'll swing it around. You can see that's where it appears that my aperture blades are located. And so now all I have to do is slide my camera back so that this point right here is directly above my tripod. So let's do that. So I'm going to slide this back. I'm going to loosen up the clamp. Try not to move my tripod here. And I'm going to slide it back until that point is centered. There we go. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead. Got to put my glasses back on. There we go. Zoom in just to make sure that we are still centered. And we are. It looks good. So I'm going to zoom back out. And now I'm going to move my focus point all the way over to the right. And I'm going to pan to the left and zoom in and see how close we got. Not bad. It's definitely better than it was. Probably would have helped if I had a flashlight because it was kind of difficult to see. But you can see that there was a little bit of shifting. And I panned to the left, and it appears that the background object panned to the left or moved to the left. So what that tells me is that I need to move my camera back a little bit. But let's go over to the other side, and we'll look at it. And yeah, you can see how the background object, I panned to the right, the background object moved to the right. So I'm still a little forward, and my lens needs to come back. But this would, with this method, you're running and gunning. I'm not shooting anything critical. If it was critical, I would be using method 2. And it'll be close enough for like a single row pano. Software these days they're so much better at stitching images together. They do have a hard time if you're directly over the tripod sometimes, but as long as you're pretty close to that no parallax point, it should be able to stitch it together all right. Okay, so method 2 is best to do in a controlled environment like we are right here. So in your home, in your studio, someplace where you have time and space to take your time and measure as accurately as you can. It's not terribly complicated, but the first 1 or 2 times you do it, it may take you a couple tries to get it right. All right, so you can see I've got the nodal rail slid all the way forward again, and the center of the tripod is lined up with the camera body, which is not what we want, but we're gonna fix that. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I'm still centered up here, and that looks pretty good. Bumped the tripod a couple times shooting this, so it's amazing I was able to get it back in the right spot. So that looks pretty good. So what you're going to do is you're going to move your focus point over to the right, and then you're going to pan to the left. And you can see that relative movement of that background object as I panned, like we saw before. There's your displacement. And then go ahead and just move your focus point over so that you can see your two objects nice and clearly right in the middle of your screen. And then I'm going to release my clamp. I'm going to do this actually from below. Okay, so I'm going to release my clamp, and then I'm going to slide this nodal slide back until that foreground object lines up with the background object. So right about there, looks good. And then I'm going to clamp it down, just like that. Okay, so then I'll zoom out. I'm going to recenter my focus point just to make sure everything looks the same. It does, and then I'm going to move my focus point over to the opposite direction. So I pan to the left, so now I'm going to pan to the right. And it should look like the other two as I zoom in. And there you go. So if you're off a little bit, what you want to do is just recenter and then just try it again. Sometimes when you're sliding the nodal rail back, sometimes the tripod may get bumped a little bit. So just keep doing it until you get as accurate as you can. Like I said before, the software these days are pretty darn good. So getting it within a millimeter or two of the true no parallax point, your stitching software won't have any trouble at all. And it's definitely 10 times better, 1,000 times better than just having your body mounted to the center of the tripod. All right, so now that you know how to find the no parallax point of your lens, get out there and shoot some panos. Let me know down in the comments how it's going. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'd be happy to help you out any way I can. One thing to note, if you are shooting on a Pano Gimbal Head, I left off one really important step in the video earlier, and that is to make sure that your lens is centered directly over the tripod before you do any of that other stuff. If you do that, then you will be golden. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, please give me a thumbs up and please consider subscribing. If you are a subscriber, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm up to like over 200. That's pretty phenomenal, I think. And I'm super excited to make these videos. I've got more panoramic videos coming in the pipeline, so I'm going to go through my complete workflow so you can expect that in the future. If it is the future, I'll have a link right up here. But anyways, hit the like, hit the subscribe. I'll see you next time. See ya.